And then my daughter had increasing mental health issues, and we lost her to suicide when she was 14, and that was in 2016. And that's why, if you ask for a pivotal moment, that was the moment that I realized I needed to change what I was doing and do a different kind of work. One is realizing for any of us as a parent, as a leader, as a person, our ability to have control is very limited.
Welcome to the CEOpeek show, where we uncover the essence of extraordinary leadership by interviewing CEOs with over 90% approval ratings on Glassdoor. Hey, Harry, good to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah, when we were checking in, we try to find kind of a trailhead for that conversation, and you gave me a lot of doors to start with. And I'm curious, is like any kind of a moment that in your career or leadership journey that you felt that your leadership foundation emerged or started to evolve, like a pivotal moment?
It's a good question. I'm sorry to take a moment to think about that. I've been a CEO for over 20 years now, two very different situations. So, I mean, the reason I'm hesitating is because there is a pivotal moment and it's not the easiest one to talk about. And I don't know if this is where you want to go, but I'll jump in. I worked in the conservation corps field for 25 years, the last 13 of which running what started as a small regional organization and became, by the time I left, a pretty good sized national organization. And conservation corps are organizations, nonprofits for the most part, and ours was, that engage young people 16 to 25 as resources to do work on public lands. And that was my career, and I loved it. And I spent, as I say, a quarter century doing that. And then my daughter had increasing mental health issues, and we lost her to suicide when she was 14, and that was in 2016. And that's why, if you ask for a pivotal moment, that was the moment that I realized I needed to change what I was doing and do a different kind of work. And so my wife and I moved out to California, and I started working where I am now at Pathpoint, where we support people with mental health diagnoses and people with disabilities and children and families in the child welfare system. And it was a really important shift in my work and a place that I felt I could make a difference on some of the issues that made such a impact on my life and my family.
I'm very touched by you sharing that as an opening, but the impact that such a personal and difficult event, I'm sorry for your loss,
Yeah,
such a
thanks.
change in in your purpose that led you to what you're doing right now.
So I guess I hesitate when you asked about a pivotal moment, but it was the moment that sort of changed what I did and why I did it. And it was sort of one day something that I cared deeply about for almost my entire working career. I still care about, it's still important to me, but I no longer wanted to put my time and energy there, and I needed to do something different. And this is an entirely different world to learn, to engage in, to figure out. But it's been good, and it's felt for me the right place to be and the right kind of work to do.
You know, as a dad for three kids, I cannot even imagine the impact of going through what you have gone through, losing the kid. I'm kind of wonder, what did you learn about yourself through that? And not just because I love where you started, because I never put a wall between our personal life and leadership is everywhere. Leadership is at home and leadership is at work, right? So I'm curious to know, when you go through such a traumatic experience, what did you learn about yourself? How did it serve you as a CEO in your new journey?
Well, a couple ways. I think one is realizing for any of us as a parent, as a leader, as a person, our ability to have control is very limited. And some of the reason I talk about our family situation is because it can happen to anybody. And this was young and very bright. My daughter is very bright, lovely, beautiful, smart. and had a serious mental illness. And that can happen genetics, it can happen through other things, but it can happen to anybody, even living in a family with loving parents and a sibling, a loving sibling, and upper middle class life and a good community and going to good schools. So there is a piece of just knowing that we don't have control on anything, on everything. I think the other piece is a lot of empathy because there are people everywhere who are dealing with all kinds of things that may not be apparent upon meeting them. And so I think the sort of philosophy of suspending judgment is really important. I remember I had a colleague I knew whose son had became public in their little town where we lived, had substance use issues. And of course we thought, oh gosh, what's happening in that house and what's going on with that family? And probably nothing is going on with that family. And it could have been our family, and then later it was our family, not with substance use, but with mental illness. And so I think I gained a lot of empathy and understanding. And I work now with an agency. We support over 3,700 people who have disabilities like cerebral palsy, autism, Down syndrome, epilepsy, who have mental health diagnoses like schizophrenia or bipolar, depression, anxiety, with people who families who are in child welfare system where children are living in foster care or then have parents who are trying to reunite with their own kids. And we're all doing the best we can. And I think one other thing that is part of this too is that we're all temporarily abled. There is no otherness of this. At some point, most of us will have physical disabilities down the road. Many of us will have intellectual disabilities as we age, either temporary disabilities when we get hurt. We're all human, we're all part of it.
Yeah. There's so much that you said. It reminded me the book I read like a few years back by Oprah Winfrey, which reminded me that how to suspend judgment is like, because sometimes we see people and we say, what's wrong with them? And how that shift to what happened to them and understand like impact from trauma to all kind of situation, or sometimes even without anything that you know. And what you said about letting go of control is like also very strong leadership. As a CEO, sometimes we feel like we need to have the control. And I sense that for you, that event actually created more distance between you and the need to have control. Did I get that right?
Well, I think it's a realization that being a leader, you're not the all powerful. I mean, not that I ever really had a leadership style like that anyway, but I think it's an important part of leadership is that being a leader is not coming up with all the ideas or telling everyone what to do. Being a leader is marshaling the incredible talents and expertise and knowledge of the people around you to work together and to raise all kinds of issues and to have conversations where people don't always agree, because that's where you get to some good answers and good figuring things out. And so I think it's also recognizing that everybody has unique abilities, talents, ideas. If we do a thing, for instance, where we have about 500 employees, and a couple times a month when we have a meet and greet, we call it, for new employees. So who's ever been hired or come on in the last few weeks will come on and meet with the whole management team. We do it through Teams or Zoom. We kind of all introduce ourselves and our background. I mean, I hear what the folks who are just joining our organization are bringing to it. It's amazing. The different talents, the different experiences, and our message out of that is please speak up. Doesn't matter if you're the first, the newest employee doing an entry level job, you have ideas and thoughts and you bring things up that I'm not going to think about or know about. So to me, that's sort of where leadership comes, is letting all those voices ring true. And that's where we get to a place where we have an organization that functions at a really high level.
And I think about the two common triggers for CEOs. Many of them are high control. I coach a few CEOs and clients, sometimes, and or judgmental. I'm actually the one, the one that was gifted with both being judgmental and look for control. And the other side of that, very few CEOs are trying to please others. So when you feel like you actually outgrowing that too, that you let go of control and suspend your judgmental, what do you see in your leadership that actually right now it evolves to what type of leadership?
I don't know what label to put on it. I mean, we talk about servant leadership, so that's maybe part of it. But I would say it's not trying to please people. I think that's really important. I mean, kindness is clear, clear is kindness. So sometimes being kind is helping someone where they're in a not a good work situation, where their talents aren't aligning to a position or their behaviors aren't meeting expectations. And so being clear with them is a form of kindness to find a better situation or to help them align to where things are. So I think it's not necessarily trying to please people. And I think a big piece of it too is being completely, as most as possible, transparent so that when we make decisions that people don't like, and there always are, but the reasons are well explained and the information is out there and folks can understand why we have to do things that we have to do or why external factors, which is often what it is, drive decisions that have to be made internally. But I think once you build a level of trust with folks and once you explain and be transparent about what's going on and act with integrity, folks have a better understanding of why things have to be certain ways.
You mentioned like the connection between transparency, trust, and integrity. And I wonder what is the cause effect between the two. I always see trust as an outcome. People say, I want to build trust, but trust is a kind of an outcome of something. What do you think actually creates trust? What is actually the journey to achieve that sense that, oh, we trust each other?
It's a great question because you can't just say trust and people will trust, right?
Yeah.
It's earned. You have to demonstrate and show. I think part of it is being true to your word. So it means if you say things that you follow up and enact them. I think another one is getting rid of secrecy. So, for instance, just a few things we do here is that our board of directors, I try to get them to know all the management team as well as other staff that they can, partly because it holds me accountable. So if I start doing nutty things, bad things, enough people have relationship with the board of directors that they can go to them and feel comfortable going to them. We also share the minutes from our management team meeting and our board meetings with every staff member. I send them out to the entire 500 staff members after the meetings so that there's a sense of we're not talking about secretive things. Here's what we talked about. If you have questions, ask us. We have, which probably a lot of groups do, a solution box where people can go in anonymously and ask anything, send any messages. We have an anonymous fraud alert piece. So it's saying to people that I'm held accountable the same way anybody else is. And if I'm doing things that aren't right, call me on it. Tell our board chair, tell other people. Here's what we're talking about. We don't always have good news. Sometimes it's good news. We got additional funding. Sometimes it's bad news. Funding got cut, but we're going to tell you and be straight with you and talk about it. And I think that authenticity and transparency are what builds trust. And maybe I'll add one other thing, which I think is the fact of having authentic conversations with people. So we're probably a lot of your listeners are like this too. We're an organization with many different sites. We have 15 or so different locations where people work, maybe more. And they're spread out over, we're in California, they're spread out over from my office. The furthest are about a 3 hour drive or so. And we're kind of in the middle. So it's not easy to get everywhere on a regular basis. But when I'll go to a place and it may run into 50 staff members, one of the things I realized early on when I got here is that rather than try to walk around and shake 50 hands, If I could have 4 or 5 really authentic conversations, I would learn a lot more about not just the people who I'm talking to, but what they're doing, what their work is, why they're here with us doing this work, what drives them every day. And it just felt like a way to actually get to know people in a different way than just walking around shaking hands. And even the people who, when the cost of that is you don't get to say hi to everyone. But I think other staff see that when I'm there, actually trying to really learn and really get to know people. So I
Mm.
think that's part of it as well.
What do you mean by having authentic conversations with your staff member, whether at offices or where your direct reports or board members?
Well, direct reports are different because I'm meeting with them regularly.
Yeah.
I meet with all that at least every 2 weeks, but many of them every week. So that's different. What I'm thinking about are people who I might see once a year, I might see once every 2 years. A lot of our folks are community based, meaning they're working in neighborhoods and communities. So when I go to the office, they're not there. So there are people who I've never met who work
Mm.
for us. So I think what it means is when I'm talking to them, it's not just, hi, nice to meet you. What's your name? Hi, nice to meet you. It's what do you do here? What did you do before you came? What do you like about it? What are some of the challenges you have? What are things we can do to help in your role?
And what does make you authentic in those conversations with people that you meet not regularly, like once a year?
I think it's showing interest in their lives and their work.
So it's actually more of empathy, I'll call it, or what do you?
I think it's just curiosity, interest, taking in, asking questions. I think it's the same as sort of almost any conversation. I mean, you're probably really good at this. This is what you do on these recordings, these shows, but it's meeting people and showing interest in their lives, real interest, not just shooting the crap kind of stuff, but trying to understand what they do and why they do it. And those conversations stick with me and I take them back and like I'll give you a quick example is that we have, for a lot of our services for people with intellectual developmental disabilities, we have two kinds of positions. One is people work in a program, almost you think of it like a school day where you come in at a certain time, you leave at a certain time, the same time every day, and you work with a team of people. The other job, you're supporting individuals in the community at, say, their job sites at their homes. So you're going out, you're working with Johnny for a couple hours, then you're driving over and meeting Mary somewhere, and you're setting your own schedule. And I had a conversation, this is years ago, with one of our guys who does that kind of job. And he said he used to be an independent contractor and he does that job because he likes setting his own schedule and having some agency over his day. And then I meet with someone else who works in the first kind of program, and they say, well, they have kids. They like being off the same time every day. They like working as a team. And those conversations really struck with me and helped think about okay, when we're recruiting, we can't just put an ad out. We have to recruit separately for these two positions and highlight the pieces that gravitate to those folks. So one job says regular hours, work with a team. The other job says set your own schedule, be independent, make decisions on your own in the community. And they appeal to very different people. So the conversations have made a big difference for me. And I hope that comes across when I talk to people, that they see that I'm genuinely interested and learning from what they're bringing to our organization.
You actually so beautifully articulated my framework for that. I call it aura, where the A stands for authenticity, which you spoke about. The U for unattachment. I'm coming without a specific agenda, like do this or do that. I'm just saying. And the R is for resonance, which felt like the emotional connection with that person that you're having an authentic conversation. And the A for O, which is like curiosity and wonder about the person. And you actually really exemplify that in that example of the conversation.
Yeah, I thank you. I like that. That's a great, and I would say the R could also be respect because I go into these and I genuinely feel like I have a huge amount of respect for the people doing the work that we do. And I would say, and this is probably true for a lot of CEOs, certainly not all. There are people much more talented than me. But I know in my organization, the job I'm in is one of the few jobs I could do in this organization. I mean, we have clinicians with licensure. We have people that have been doing one on one supports for years, 20 years, 30 years. We have people that understand teaching and working with folks to learn basic skills. I mean, I'm in awe of the folks I work with, no matter where they are within the organization. And I very much realize that my skill set is limited and I feel like I can do my job, but there are a lot of jobs here that I couldn't do. And so I enjoy learning about the expertise that my coworkers bring to their jobs.
I like to circle back to what you mentioned earlier, but I let them hold me accountable. But, there's power dynamics in every organization, and just the title itself, the CEO, even when the CEO invites accountability from people, they don't take on the invitation because it's still people get used to that position in other companies, other cultures, and any people took on that and really held you accountable? Can you share any stories of people that really held you accountable for anything? I mean, not the board, you people that report to you below them.
Yeah, well, we've certainly had lots of people submit solutions asking anonymously, why are you doing this policy? Why are you doing this one? We had more, the time we probably had the most was during COVID. The early days of COVID were very difficult. I mean, we're an agency that provides supports to individuals in need, right? And so we can't all go telework. We are still out there. We're still working with individuals. We're doing it the safest way that we can. We have, for instance, a couple residential facilities where we have people with serious mental illness living with staff 24/7. We can't just leave, we're still there. So people were very interested. Why? And the guidance and the rules were constantly changing. So we had lots of folks. Why do we have to wear, and people were on all sides. I don't want to wear a mask. Everybody should be wearing a mask. And so the way that we worked that is at the beginning, we had virtual meetings at the very beginning every day. And then we went to 3 times a week and then to weekly. And now years later, we're monthly. But in those meetings, we held them in a webinar format so that people could ask questions anonymously and they could ask anything they wanted and had all kinds of stuff that came in that challenged, why are we doing this? What's the rationale for this? This isn't fair. And I think we had really good discourse and really good back and forth on these things. And there were people who didn't agree with what we did. And how we backed it up is we said we're following the guidance of our funders and our regulatory agencies, so that we decided not to make scientific decisions. That's not our expertise. We based on the stuff that we had, but people didn't like it, right? We had a vaccine mandate because that was put down by the state of California for our work, and people left our organization because they didn't want to get a vaccine. So there are definitely places there where folks are going. And the other piece about accountability is that I think some of it is also a mindset. So it's knowing, like I put out the board and our management minutes after every meeting to all staff. I doubt very many staff read them. People are busy. They don't want to read this stuff. It's not particularly exciting. But some of it is the principle of putting it out there, that we're not holding secrets, that it's there if you want it. If you're interested, here it is. We're going to keep sending it out. I'm going to have someone sign my timesheet every time and sign my credit card receipts and my vacation time offs. I don't have a car allowance. I don't have a pathpoint vehicle. If I travel, I do it the cheapest way I can. I mean, we're not trying to say I'm any better than anyone else.
When I coach actually the executive team of a foster kid, a nonprofit during COVID, and first very similar to what you actually share. People, they cannot work remotely. They manage foster homes. And I'm curious for you whether when is your values that you deeply believed in, and especially in tough time like COVID that were tested, and you felt that they are competing with another value that actually you cannot choose, or it's very difficult to make a selection between the two. I'll give an example. You mentioned earlier integrity as part of your values. And me sometimes going overboard with integrity, I find that I compromise other value that integrity competes with. So I'm curious whether you had a collision of values that you felt like, ooh, I'm stuck in between.
I don't have a good example from COVID. I can give you some example. Well,
Yeah, not necessarily COVID anywhere.
yeah, of two values inner. I might have to think about that. I'm sure I have. I'm sure I've had many conflicts of things I couldn't figure out or didn't. It's just hard to think of an example at the moment.
I hear you know describing leadership that, and you are on public, so people will hold you accountable for telling things that. So I'm actually quite sure that you walk the talk because you came forward to this interview, right? So I'm kind of sense a leadership that really not in line on with other corporations from nonprofit even to for-profit companies. And now, when you look outside at the world, especially the convergence of politics and business, the more we see, listen to the news, and see like more autocratic leadership show up, both in corporations, politics, and beyond. How do you bridge that gap between like to create like island of what you call humble leadership in a world that actually deviated from such kind of leadership? At least I see that we see more and more gaps between that, what I see as a great leadership to what we see every day on the news.
So it's a good question. Maybe it goes back to my earlier statements about what we can control, what we can't control. I can't control what's happening in our leadership as a country right now or what other organizations are doing or companies, but we can shine our own little light. And maybe one way that we do it is that we don't have in our mission statement to be the best. Because to me, that implies that our goal is to be better than other organizations that do similar work. I don't care if I'm better or worse. I want to be the best we can be, but we don't want to be, I hope, better than others. I hope everybody else is wonderful too, because as we see our mission is supporting people to flourish. And we have, as I said, 3,700 people that we support. But just in the developmental disability system alone in California are almost 500,000 people. And the behavioral health system is about the same for serious mental illness. And the child welfare system is a large number as well. So if our whole focus, if our mission is helping people flourish, we're not just about the 3,700 people that we have in our services. I'd like to help everybody we can in the state. And so we see our other organizations who are doing similar things as partners, and we approach them as partners. We share information that we have. We're in lots of coalitions, we're in lots of associations, and we go into those as, hey, let's help everybody out. We'll help them, they'll help us. We're stronger together when we work together. I was in a meeting yesterday with folks in Los Angeles of similar organizations, and we are talking about the recent activity with ICE that's going on down there. And we put together a policy that we took from somewhere else. And I shared our policy, said anybody can take it, do something, do whatever you want with it if it's helpful. People share stuff with us that we use, and that policy itself we got from another organization. So it's like, how can we all help each other? And so that's our attitude. And it's just, I know it's different. And I know I'm not saying everybody should do this. It works for me and it works for our organization. And different ways work for others. And that's good for them. That's great. I'm not evangelizing that everyone should do this.
So I'm curious, there's a say that CEO is a lonely position, feels lonely at the top. And can you recall a moment that you felt most misunderstood as a CEO? And what was the impact? What did it teach you about you or the situation?
Well, I think that is a very true statement because I think as a CEO, you have to be very careful about getting around the professional lines and having friendships and personal relationships. And not that you can't, but I just think it has to be really careful with that. And so, in some ways, these different associations, partnerships, are one way to deal with that because I work with other people who are CEOs. And so we can share and have some camaraderie around that without bending lines on an internal basis. I think for me, something I struggle with is taking time away. And I think maybe that's an area where I feel some of the biggest gulf between me and other staff. Some of it's my own issue and feeling responsible, and some of it is the nature of the position that it's hard as a CEO to say, I'm going to go away for a week and not look at my email and put my phone on silent. And it doesn't really happen. That may, at least for me, I think others are more successful at being able to do that, but I've struggled that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know any. But it will be interesting to see what happens when it happens for you and for other CEOs. Like, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy that, hey, people need me, so I cannot disconnect myself? Maybe the fear of finding coming back after 2 weeks vacations off the grid and find that everything works very well.
Well, the thing is, you're right. I mean, I'm sure it will. I work with a great team and they'll do really well. Gosh, it's probably my own fear of being disconnected more than the fear that the organization won't survive. I'm sure they'll do without me. It's my own fear of not knowing what's happening. And yeah,
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I remember that when I was young, I worked for a paper mill, which is like 365 manufacturing site, huge. And management is not there over the weekend. And when we look at the metrics on the first day of the week, we see that performance on the weekends are really, really better than the weekdays when management is there.
yeah, yeah. No one's bugging them. They let them do their work.
It was really painful to see that as a recurring pattern for us as management at the time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think
And
it's a me issue, not a organizational issue.
yeah, so, Harry, with such a huge experience under your belt, what are you still working on or at all, if at all? What is your growth edge? Things that you're still working to develop and grow as a leader?
That's also, you have a lot of good questions. I certainly have things I want to try to get done, both at the agency or in the community, our broader communities for a mission. But when you ask about what I want to learn as a leader, I haven't really thought about it that way. I don't know. I mean, I probably need to spend some time and try to think about that. I haven't, since I've been in this kind of a role for a long time, my energy is often around what things I want to do rather than what do I want to learn as skills. I have a lot of knowledge I want to gain. I'm
Mm,
still learning these systems that I'm working within. So I have a lot of knowledge I need to get. In terms of skills, though, I would have to think through that. And not that I have all the skills. I'm certainly deficient in a lot, but sort of know what I'm deficient in. And I think like a lot of CEOs hire around me the people who have the skills that I don't have as much of.
Well, I find skills are easy because skills are technical in nature. You can learn a new skill. There's a book for everything. Now you have ChatGPT for everything. I find capacities, which is more dealing with the innate challenges within ourselves and things that all it requires more inward. I started my inward journey somehow when I was a CEO, but most of the big leaps after and so much regret it. I'm just like, oh, if I bring my wisdom now doing inner work for like a decade and a half to my CEO position, I think, wow, I don't know. It will be so different. So it's having both is very, and you're not alone. I tell you that I coach a lot of CEOs, and before that, they don't lean inward because they're so busy in the external world. Well, in a reality, the inner game runs the outer game, but we don't see that. So if you write a book one day about leadership, let's assume that you write a book. How will you title it, or what's come to your mind? Just kind of a quick about leadership.
I don't know what I'd title, but I think it would be about the themes of leadership that I think we spoke about. Humble leadership, leadership by recognizing the gifts in everybody around you, leadership by facilitating a group to work together toward a common purpose, leadership in recognizing that the leaders don't have all the good ideas and getting the ideas from everybody is what puts us forward.
Yeah, I'm curious what would be a good place for you to brings us to a closure today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to chat. You certainly work with lots of CEOs and see lots of CEOs. And so maybe this was a little different. I don't know. But if nothing else, I hope people walk away with thoughts about suspending judgment, thinking about the gifts that everybody brings, realizing that everybody's working on something, fighting something. We're all temporarily abled, or temporarily disabled, or somewhere in between. And there's really a light inside of everybody we meet. And our job as leaders is to pull all those lights together. And that's when the magic happens.
I really, really appreciate our time together today, and especially where we started, because trauma is usually a trigger for personal development, even if we don't call it that way. And even for we don't go in a process of, and a lot of things happen. You actually explain how that was pivotal and about who you are in the world, right? And there is like, we call it big T, big traumas that come from like an events like you had losing a loved one. And there are some small trauma. Most people go through not a significant event and then they don't have that trigger that enable them to make that change and see the world differently as you did. And my hope is that people will engage with themselves and grow without the facing traumas. And does it make sense? That's the big difference, actually. Triggers to how do we grow without pivotal moments like you had?
Yeah, I think it's the concept of post traumatic growth, right?
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to say to someone who's in trauma or grieving or shortly in their peace. But it's an important message because that is a place to grow from. And I think a lot of us do grow from it, but we don't realize that. We don't see that right away and don't see it for a while when that's happening. I can read you a quote that has meant a lot to me, very short, about that concept, if you're okay.
Yeah, sure.
It's from someone named Clarissa Pincola Estes. And she wrote, "New seed is faithful. It roots deepest in the places that are the most empty. New seed is faithful. It roots deepest in the places that are the most empty." And when I first was given that, I wanted to rip it up and push it away. But it's been for me 9.5 years since I lost my daughter, and it makes sense to me now.
Thank you for so much for sharing, and thank you for your time. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Thanks,
Looking
Dave.
forward to see you.